Welcome to the International CONFEX webinar for today. My name is Gareth Dedman, and we are talking event marketing, going from good to great in a COVID world. I am delighted to be joined by Mark Ash, the CEO of Pure 360. Hello, Mark.
Delighted to be here, Gareth. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's funny how this came about, really. I was talking to Mark and trying to get all his ideas of how we could improve our campaign, looking at building people's confidence in returning to events with the view of CONFEX and EPS and other events we're running. And, you know, this is kind of just for me, this one. You guys are along for the ride. I'm just stealing as much of Mark's knowledge as possible. So really the topics we're trying to tackle today is how we can use email within the marketing mix to really, as you say, create an immersiveness around online events, then build that up to sort of hybrid small scale events. And when everything opens up again, just having consumers and visitors the confidence in coming back to large scale live events. Now we can do that. And Mark and the guys at Pure 360 have done some amazing work with ABTA and the travel industry. So we're really interested to hear what they've been doing. But really, I just want to hand over to Mark. Mark, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on how we can help the events industry through email?
Well, that's I think, you know, from our perspective, we've seen a number of our customers go through seismic change in transformation for the last 6 months, and you know whether that change was already foreseen or not, it's been forced upon marketers, upon organizations of all different kinds. And, you know, it's been incredibly tough. And as a business, our focus is on helping marketers be the best they can be. And that means, you know, we have to be very agile to changing marketplaces and look at new ways of approaching problem solving and adapting to a changing marketplace. And I think, you know, this is a key.
It's a very changed marketplace.
Yeah, where that's happened. And, you know, I think there's an opportunity. You know, it's been quite damaging for a number of businesses, but it's also an opportunity to really think about how it can make itself adaptable, not just to this situation, but anything else in the future. And we saw some research from McKinsey looking at the development curve of people's digital transformation, rocketed from literally an average of several years to a couple of weeks or months in certain certain categories. And, you know, it's an opportunity for businesses to create differentiation. I think that to really reevaluate, well, what is my why? What value do I drive to my audience?
Right.
I think that that's a huge opportunity for marketers to adapt, to shake off old practices, which were just there just because they were in the business before, and to question, well, is this driving any value? Mm-hmm. And it has to be based around what value am I providing to my audience? When you think about that, then your choice of media, you know, your media mix and how you engage with your audience will naturally shift according to what you need to do to deliver value to your end customer or your audience. You know, from a conference perspective, you know, it's about, when to a certain extent, is trying to recreate the live experience online and using certain mechanisms to be able to achieve that, which can be very difficult. And it's really difficult to replicate that. I've seen some examples of things like hybrid events where you have some in-person activity, so long as there's no lockdown, of course, where you can have some person in event activity, gives you that live experience as best as you possibly can, whilst having an online audience. And I think that that's going to represent a permanent shift in the future. Now, with that in mind, you've got to think about, well, you know, as an event organizer, is everything I do with my audience all about event? Well, it's not. That's the pinnacle of your relationship with your audience.
Sure, that's the final endpoint.
Exactly. It's almost the culmination of a relationship you have with your audience, which is centralized around one core theme, i.e. helping an industry to overcome, woes in travel, for instance. This is where our experience with ABTA was really interesting. And using email as an opportunity to drive engagement with that audience, that has to be prioritized, or at least its importance increased. Because if you maintain that engagement with that audience and that relationship, and you solve problems by having a really engaged relationship over email and other digital channels, then your reliance on that one key event is reduced, and you have longevity over time with your audience. I mean, effectively, that is the goodwill of the business, of any business. It's the same as us. Effectively the asset of our business is the goodwill that we hold with our customers.
Yeah. It's a very interesting way of looking at it there. You say that building that relationship with the customers and with the visitors, not just focusing on the endpoint. I remember back in the day doing email marketing for events. You'd have the event, you'd send, maybe it would end on a Wednesday or Thursday. You'd try and send everyone the thank you for coming email on the Thursday night or the Friday morning, but most likely you went to the pub when the event finished, and you'll get that out on Monday. And then you wouldn't email them again until the tickets for the next year's event went on sale, 7 or 8 months later.
I've been there.
Yeah.
No,
that's not going to work anymore.
I don't. Yeah. Well, I think that you're kind of minimizing the opportunities to grow revenue streams and engagement with your audience by just limiting it to those single events.
Yeah.
For me, it's all about building up, change of a focus from single events to more engagement paths.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's drill down to why my audience engaging with me in the first place. What's their why? What's their core want? Now, sometimes that's about networking. That's about collaboration with other professionals within the same industry vertical. Sometimes it's about learning and development. Me as a marketer, I want the next step of my career. So I want to know what's going on in the industry, what's the latest and greatest, or I've got some real gaps in my knowledge that I need to fill. And I think that's a huge opportunity for event organizers to collect data around what's driving the imperative for their audience to join their event in the first place. And if you know
personalizing the content to that.
Exactly, because you're really kind of satisfying the need, the reason why they follow your brand in the first place. And that gives you the opportunity to curate content, to curate greater functionality, within your web presence beyond single events. It's an opportunity to focus on key tasks or topics. So, there's certain marketers and they want to know, well, I want to know more about this new area. I don't feel like I've got it under wraps. Let's do a small webinar and let's invite an advertiser in to sponsor it or to take part in that. There's a way of curating content with the help of brands and advertisers that you would have had at the event on a more long-term engagement path basis. And that's exactly how it works with ABTA, with us, to be honest. For us, we want to support the industry get through this. And if we can feed tactics that have worked along the way, then that's great news for other clients that can do something about it and use those tactics. And I think, as I said before, transformation is the key KPI for a number of businesses right now. They're having to test new things that they would never have tested before because it was just lower down the priority list. Well, that's gold dust. That insight, if we can show them, well, one company did this test and it worked brilliantly, or another company did this test and it didn't work. But in doing so, you can provide a constant stream of insight to your customers, and thereafter your event, you become really a thought leader in your space. And I shouldn't say that organizers should be publishers, for instance, but to a certain extent, your role is to educate or is to provide opportunities for your audience to educate themselves or to network. And I think there's different ways in which you can fulfill that.
It's funny that education point you mentioned there. What you're kind of doing there is you're you're breaking down the purpose of the event. Like, why do people come to my events? And there's that personal development, that personal learning from the seminar stuff, but there's also the business development, the deal making. So what you're doing there is what you're saying, you've got to break down why people come to your event, what were they going to get face to face, and what of that can you provide digitally. You've then got to, as you say, data collection becomes so important. You need to find out what they want to know, and then you can personalize email communications out based on that. Like, the section A want to receive this, section B want to receive that. But are you not then creating a huge sort of content overhead?
Yes, I mean that's the immediate fear, Gareth. And to be honest, it's the number one fear of anyone going into email marketing when they look at the challenge of data collection. What am I going to do with this data? I would say it's not as onerous as you first think, because typically a lot of that content you already have anyway. You're repurposing it, you're making it more accessible to your audience because you are personalizing it. The other aspect is, well, you've got a whole raft of advertisers and brands that want to network with your audience. And what better way to do that is to identify use cases that your audience have problems with that need solving, and they can solve that in a conversation with a brand that is designed to help solve that specific problem. Mm-hmm. You're creating almost like a forum for advertisers to meet brands very specifically to solve defined problems. Do you know what I mean? There's different ways you can do that, but the first step is capturing your audience's needs and wants on email, and then you're able to deliver more personalized content advertising within your newsletter program, on your website, in forums, in different types of meeting scenarios, sponsored webinars. But I think it'll give you more media assets than you would have maybe have had that is just focused on one specific event, and several events over the whole course of the year. I think it's an opportunity. Is that data nowadays is becoming,
it's your most valuable commodity.
The real economy now. I mean, It's everything. For us, just, when we work with consumer brands, for them to identify what's driving the context to buy is everything. Why am I buying? What purpose is it suiting? Is it for a birthday? Is it just for me? Is it because I feel something about this particular brand? I've got a taste profile. Am I a champion, or am I not in love with your brand, and so forth? Knowing that kind of stuff is gold dust, because if I'm an audience member going to your event, and I have a very specific purpose in mind, to be able to, for someone to save my time and just put me in contact with exactly the people I need to speak to, or the information I need, is gold dust. And then you're talking about a community. Really, what you're building is a community, and that's very similar to what ABTA really is all about.
Because what people are missing at going to an event is that walking around the show, looking at all the booths, taking it all, and then coming back and going, right, these are the 3 or 4 people that really interest me, that I want to have that communication, that conversation with. So the role of the marketer then becomes you've got to find out from these people what they wanted to learn and who they wanted to meet at your event. And then the role of the email channel in your marketing mix is to fulfill those needs, to put relevant, timely, personal messages out to people and say, this is what you wanted to know. This is how my brand can fulfill that for you, and really putting them in touch with the suppliers and the learning communications.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? I think what it means is, as an event organizer in that industry, you're almost taking the responsibility, taking on the role of helping digital transformation for your industry. Mm-hmm. You're taking on that ownership, and helping marketers say, how do I do this online? Send a series of emails with how-to tips on how to run if you've never run email before, just filling that content that could be provided by advertisers or brands or partners, then that removes the overhead. But you're engaging your audience all the time, and that's building new brand equity that didn't necessarily was there before. It's not just a meeting point, but actually, as an event organizer, you own the kind of the knowledge the knowledge for the industry and how it's distributed. So it sounds really onerous, but I would say just focus on low-hanging fruit.
Yes,
bite-sized projects that deliver quick returns. It's not all about building a single customer view or having a huge infrastructure. I would say since this started, a number of brands that have come to us because they've needed to change quickly. I mean, whether it's travel or retail or other areas, they've needed to change quickly, and they were on a path to say doing a big single customer view project or something like that. Loads of integrations, blah blah blah. There's no money all of a sudden. They need to adapt really quickly, and there's certain things they know they're not doing that they should be. All of a sudden, the willingness to experiment is multiplied.
Yeah,
absolutely. You've got to, I wouldn't say throw caution to the wind, but you've got to make quick decisions. And you want the data in your hands to make those quick decisions and test. So start with small projects, not things that are going to take years. I don't think we ever work to those timeframes anymore. Small iterative steps will transform your brand, will differentiate you from your competitors. This is the key thing. It's not necessarily about the old KPIs of the past. It's about how quickly can I differentiate my business from my competitors.
Mm-hmm.
And you need experimentation for that. And you need to work with partners that will support you on that, that you have a roadmap of what I'm going to test next. And don't be afraid of collecting data, because that's going to lead your decision-making as to the right path to go.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because you might have originally had an event planned for October, November. You then rescheduled it for, let's say, January, February. You're now probably looking at rescheduling for June or July. A lot of other events from the sort of November to January time are rescheduling for June or July. So how do you make your event the one that people attend in July? And as you say, that I think that's where the low-hanging fruit comes. Let's get all the data we've got and let people know, and just keep being in their inbox and but then doing data collection, doing surveys, stuff around that, so that your messages are more and more personalized. And then when it comes to the valuable time of, okay, I am gonna put on presentable outdoor clothes and leave my house for once, and go to an event, yours is the event I'm going to go to.
That is the whole point of it, Gareth, because everything's been moved online. Then the noise that everyone receives is huge. So stand out is really difficult. So differentiation is important, but if it's personalized to you, instead of, well, I'm just going to go to this event because it's on every year, rather than, well, I need to go to this event because I've already arranged a meeting, a networking session, and I'm going to find out the answer to this question that I asked them.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you're almost creating a value exchange. You've gone to your audience and said, what do you want to find out? And they've told you, right, I need these 3 topics answering. Well, if you come to this event, I will show you how you're going to solve this, this, and this. You see what I mean? It's
I do.
A compelling reason. Well, I need to put that in my calendar, and I'm not just a casual observer. I'm going to show up now because I've had this value, it's reciprocity between the brand and the audience member. And I think that's really important. You go into a value exchange, give me your data. Right, I'm going to make sure we're going to have curated content for you. Now, it's either going to be an event, or let's say you've got an education series. Well, I'll tell you what, because you want this, this, and this, I'm going to send you a newsletter sequence. And in this newsletter sequence, it's going to cover all of those topics.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Stage 1, 2, 3, you've given me 4 topics. Okay, I've got the next 10 weeks, we're going to cover those 4 topics in depth. And that can all be automated. You take your content, you automate a series, a nurture series, an education series within email, and off you go. So it's not as onerous as you think. Our platform's designed to do a lot of the heavy lifting, but what it means is you spend more time doing the good stuff, which is content and thinking of ideas to create value.
Let the campaign run itself.
Exactly.
Also, I just think it's really interesting there that from a customer point of view, when you buy a ticket to, say, a theatre show, you just put your name and your email address in and you pay, and then that's all they need. When you go to a trade show that's that's free to attend. A lot of the times it's free to attend, but there is that sort of trade-off. You're paying with your data in a way. There's a long registration form that's got lots of questions on, and that normally puts people off filling them in. But if you're proving in the run-up to the event, I'm using what I know about you to make sure that everything you've received from me is relevant. Everything you've received from me is helping you grow your role at your company and your company's standing in the industry. And I'm proving to you that when you get to my event, I've got more of the personalized stuff for you, because, rather than you having to trawl through the 3 days of seminar sessions on the 6 theatres, here's the 2 on Tuesday that are good for you, the 3 on Wednesday. So then when they come to register for the event and they see that registration form, they go, I don't mind giving my data because I know you're going to use it right.
Well, let's just take that example, Gareth. That's an awesome example. And using analogies from retail and other verticals in travel, how about, where you, there's some kind of, what's it called? A virtual concierge service for clothing.
Right.
And there's kind of a couple of, Chapar is one, is a men's service. Not that I use it, you can tell, but you basically, what you do is you fill in a form, and you basically give them a sense of what they like, what you like and dislike. They show you a few styles, there's a few images, there's a couple of questions. They work out your taste profile. We select your clothes and put them in the post to you. Now, what if you could kind of use that kind of mechanism to gamify data collection? Data collection doesn't have to be boring. Just say, what's your view of the market? What are your key concerns of the industry? What do you want to get out of this event? What are your ambitions for the next 12 months? Bang, 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 bang. Right, we think this is the agenda you should be looking at. This is the content we're going to send you over the next 12 weeks. This is the next webinar that's going to come up that's going to solve that question. Now, that's great. And if you can go back to that process and input more and more data over time, then it's kind of not necessarily event specific. It's not to say that you will not be doing those events, of course, but you can either use that in the run up to an event or just have that ongoing. There's an ongoing content program. No reason, you can't do that. As an interesting in travel, Secret Escapes, when the lockdown happened, they started sending a new weekly email, postcards from our travels. And that was about engaging people during the lockdown, giving them inspiration stories so that they can add stuff to their wish list.
Right.
Effectively, what you're doing is you're helping to build future purchase consideration set, which is the precursor to you forming and crystallizing your purchase decision. So it's really clever. But what you're doing is you're saying, okay, if I wasn't in this scenario, come January, I'll probably want to go to these 3 areas of the world. And you're giving people the opportunity to look ahead and inspire them at the same time and make that preemptive decision. I think it's the same kind of thing with events. You could okay, let's plan your day.
Yeah.
What you're going to do. Morning, noon, afternoon, whatever.
So you could put something out while you're putting your conference panel, your seminar panel together. You could put out surveys to your email database and say, what do you want to see discussed? Who do you want to see speak on it? Yeah. And if we can't get those people on the day, or we can't get those topics covered on the day, because we can get webinars in advance and we can email those out to you. And so you use people's preferences to stretch out the content. Some of it's at the event, some of it's in advance. So you really stretch that out.
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
I think you can brand, product market and brand those individual forums or whatever those are, those vehicles for delivering content.
It really gives you that opportunity to create differentiation between other brands, because there's going to be events that aren't doing this, that are sitting back and just saying, we'll wait till we get our new dates and our new venues and we'll just email everyone and say new date, new venue. And there's going to be events who are putting on webinars, podcasts, online seminar sessions, and by the time you get to the event, you're part of their community.
This is it. And I think that if you don't do that, you're right. You just go through this lull. You go through this kind of enforced lockdown period anyway until the situation is resolved. The engagement you have with your email list just declines and ages. That's the other thing as well. If you're not engaged with them, well, people change jobs, and you're not. You know what I mean? If you've got no engagement, then there's no reason to re-engage or resubscribe to an event which isn't in the calendar yet.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So your list is going to churn. It's going to age over time. So think of any context to keep on that overall conversation. We work with a rug manufacturer, interestingly. You think about when you buy a rug, the interaction between buying that rug and then buying another rug might be another 2 years.
Yeah.
So how do you keep that warmth? How do you keep that engagement with the brand during that interim period? Well, they launched just maintenance products and content for people to look after their rugs and get longer life out of the rugs. It wasn't a huge revenue driver for the business, but it allowed them to maintain longevity with their customer base.
Keeping the communication going.
Exactly. And you should the next, your rug, you've had it up for 2 years. That time you looked at a new one. How about we remind our customers that 3 months before the end of the 2-year anniversary? Mm-hmm. So I think this isn't just about events; it's across the whole industry. Brands are evolving themselves, and they have to think about not necessarily the commodity they produce, but what value they're providing to their customers at the end of the day, because that will drive the adaptability of that brand.
So it looks at, normally when event marketing, speaking as an event marketer, normally when you fire an email out, your one purpose of the email, doesn't matter what you've written in it, who it's interviewing or whatever, you want someone to register for your event.
Yeah.
But I think what we're saying here is that changes now. You want that email to start a two-way conversation, whether it's register for my event and tell me some information about yourself, look at this interesting article on the website and go and look at the partner who's posted it and start a conversation with a dialogue with that partner. Look at my website where I've got this poll and these forms and tell me a bit more about your interest in the industry. And then use that. The next email is tailored based on that one, and it just goes and goes and goes. There will be some people who don't engage and they can get the base email until they start to engage. But for those people who do engage and do come back to you, their engagement is rewarded with more and more personalized and relevant emails for them.
Absolutely. That's hitting the nail on the head, Gareth. It is all about creating an opportunity, an interface between advertiser and audience, between one person who wants to network with somebody else, to one person to solve somebody else's problem. I mean, that's effectively what you're creating, is that interface. But the first step is, what are the problems that you want solving in your industry? Now let me go away and resolve that for you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be a one-time data event. That's also, well, did you like this topic? Do you want to hear more about it? Or do you want, what other topics do you want to hear about? We'll get another session arranged for that, or we'll send some new content on the blog. Creating maybe pockets of different types of decision makers on your website. Let's say you run an event in the travel industry. There'll be some online travel agents, there'll be some offline travel agents, there'll be some people involved in merchandising, there'll be some people in different departments. How about we create different communities or forums or areas of content which our audience can self-identify with?
Yeah.
You don't have to actually collect all the data. We identify, for instance, for us, when we're looking at buyer habits or future propensities to buy, we look at people's habits. They don't necessarily have to identify everything about themselves or give us all that data. We just know there's a stream of an audience that are really interested in this particular taste profile or this particular content area.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And we know roughly what are the issues for this particular type of organization. And that is really good, because then you can really stream, segment and personalize that content, segment events in the future.
So you're creating personas, and you're allowing, you're putting your customer in, but also giving the opportunity to subscribe to a persona channel, if you will.
Exactly that.
No, that's great. That's great. I think it's a really good opportunity and a really viable opportunity. You know, you've got the old school segmentation as well of, you know, if someone hasn't opened 10 of your emails in a row, you email them and say, do you still want to get my emails? But, you know, you've got if you start profiling people and allowing them to let you know more information about them so that you can tailor the communications of people who aren't responding to that, there's different stuff you can do to them as well. Like, not communicate with them as much, you know, if they're not responding. So you then really start to not just segment your audience on what you know about them and what they're interested in, but what they're not interested in and what they're not opening. And you get two pots that way.
Exactly. We have like what we call an RFE dashboard, which kind of just looks at the recency, frequency of engagement and engagement for certain topics. And I think that's really key at understanding, content affinities or taste affinities towards one, even though somebody might not have actually bought anything or acted in a certain way or left any data, it still allows you to anonymously personalize based on what they've engaged with in the past. And I think that's really important, but just creating those areas. So instead of, you know, typically an event will have advertisers and brands and not much else in between. Well, how about an area which is just all about, you know, issues, areas, concern areas, or topics of discussion topics. Help you find the context as to why people come to this event, what they're looking to find. Yeah, you might get, you know, it's so always a mix of these different data points. It's never kind of one thing or another.
Yeah, no, it's been really interesting for us in CONFEX running these webinars, because you see such different job titles registering for the different events and the different webinars, and that we're doing podcasts with the event production show and seeing such a different range of job titles and stuff registering for that. So, you know, we're now able to personalize our marketing communications based on that. We know that people who are watching us now still have sat through half an hour of us chatting are probably quite interested in email marketing and how they can personalize their content. Probably not as many people in this chat were interested in the last one because it wasn't in any way relevant to that. But that's what's so good about this ability to communicate with people in a long-term run up to the event. I think it's really, really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much of being able to stand out is allowing your audience to engage with you and self-select. So if you provide opportunities for self-selection, you know, well, I'm interested in this and this, then you're really scrabbling around in the dark. It's really difficult. You can't really personalize unless you have those data points. So, you know, being able to say, I like that piece of information, or I didn't like that piece of information, or I'd like to hear more on that. You know, there's the mechanisms to do that just within just tagging certain piece of content and allowing people to ask, I want more of that. You can do that both anonymously at scale, and you could do that, you know, on a one-to-one basis. And being able to say, okay, well, on my selected topics are these 5 things. I want these in my newsletter program. Well, all of that can be set up and automated, you know, so long as you're able to tag the content going into the system. That's something that could be automated in itself. So, you know, there are ways and means of doing this, of creating content to, I guess, open up the context for event organizers. And, you know, with the help, certainly with advertisers, because advertisers want to meet people that, you know, they have a solution whose problems they've got, you know. I want to work with people that I know they've got a problem with this, and I know that, you know, my solution can help solve that. So it's just encouraging your users to hold their hands up and identify themselves, and, you know, that's the quickest way to getting that problem solved. Yeah,
if they can identify themselves and you can deal with them on a personal level and make it relevant for them, then you'll have two completely different people with completely different business objectives and completely different job titles, both saying, I can't wait to go for that event, it's just right for me. But they've got two completely separate bits of content and email channels that have come to them and made them feel that way.
it feels really hard because when I speak at a conference, or anyone for that matter, and you go into a room and there may be like 50 people, 100 people, and you know, out of that 100 people, sometimes it's a broad topic, but you don't know the reason why or what are the specific questions. You know, people are coming from the same, from two different angles. And you know, sometimes typically in a single event, as you say, it's the kind of the nexus, the coming together, a lot of preparation, a meeting point, but you don't necessarily get that data. And I think that's where, you know, with an online event, you're able to at least collect what are these questions that I want to find out. What's the whole point? Save me time.
Yeah.
We've got 1,000,001 different exhibitions to go to. Why am I going to go to this one versus another one? Well, if I've told them I need these 3 questions answered, and they can supply that to me, I can find that out on the day. I'm going to go to this event. I can lose that one. I don't have to go to that one. There's less of an imperative because people aren't booking travel or hotel accommodation. They can call it off. You know what I mean? It's very difficult to maintain someone's focus on an event at a particular period of time. So,
but also through these channels, when live events have opened up, if we continue to do this kind of thing, then you know that we'll have additional people who aren't going to go to the live event. They can't take that one day out the office, but the run up to the event and the information before the event has served their need. There will obviously be a lot of people who go to the event, but you then open yourself up to more of a data collection point of view because you're getting stuff from people who aren't going to come to the event.
That's right. I mean, you consider conversely publishers of any industry vertical, right? They have broad readership, but the vast majority of it is anonymous. So huge readership, anonymous, limited first-party data on, you know, what people want other than through their readership habits. Whereas event organizers have a lot of that first-party data. So a good opportunity, I think, to disrupt the marketplace and to provide much more a richer content experience, because you're picking through the all the other information, all of the noise, and saying, well, if you pose these 3 questions and I'll get them answered, either by ourselves or by one of our partners, we'll get an answer to that. That's a fantastic opportunity. Yeah? So lots of opportunities and for brands, I think, to investigate. And start off small and build up.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the key, is start off small and build up. And especially with what we're looking at is, you know, you've got to build people's confidence. If events were to open tomorrow and shopping centres were to open and football games were to open, there are still a lot of people. I mean, I can't wait to get outside. But there are a lot of people who are still not going to feel safe straight away. And building that confidence and warming them up is going to be so paramount. I think you're really right there.
I entirely agree.
Now, we've had quite a few questions come in, I'm afraid, so I'm going to have to, and I'm worried that we're going to run out of time, so I'm going to fire a few at you if you don't mind. One of which we've had one that says, due to the nature of our business market, business crises usually increase our events attendance, which is interesting. So we've seen an overwhelming number of digital events and increased nearly 2 times our regular events calendar. However, 8 months in, it seems competitors are starting to pick up. Do you have any thoughts on how to stand out with a digital event invite in the busy digital event invite marketplace?
Whoa.
They do note saying, I'm having to keep this one anonymous, I'm afraid. Any creative, inventive digital event invite ideas you might have? Or is it what we've been saying is the invite not the important thing? It's warming people up to coming rather than just the one event invite.
Yeah, I think it's more that it's creating some kind of cyclical behavior, repeatable behavior. It's a bit like retail. Where retail's, some brands have really rocketed is where they've changed to, not necessarily they've completely changed to a subscription service, but their marketing performs much the same kind of functionality, of repeatability, replenishment campaigns, those kind of things. Mm-hmm. So you get into a steady habit of using the same brand every single time. So I think, as you collect data And I know what you mean. When there's a crisis, that's awesome because people need to know what's going on and need that knowledge quick. And sometimes there's a speed to market there, isn't there? Get that information to your attendees as quickly as possible. And then competitors obviously jump on the bandwagon and start to repeat. I think that's the time when you've got to think about, well, how can I get somebody into a more cyclical, repeatable pattern of events? So email series where you subscribe to an education trail. So I'm going to embark on an education series. It's going to take me 6 months. I'm going to lock myself into a learning pattern for the next 6 months. We're doing something actually with the IDM where our marketers can, get a certificate at the end of a learning experience. So it's something for the individual there that they're going to benefit from staying engaged with your brand. That's one thing. Other loyalty mechanisms. So what benefits can you give to your audience as a result of them using you periodically over a long period of time, so that you have a much more of a subscription kind of a kind of methodology, a feeling of, well, actually, I'm on this long-term path with this vendor because I'm committed to a series of learning, for instance.
Sure. Just trying to rattle through this. I've been given the 5-minute warning. No, we have a couple of other ones, some sort of quick ones. I don't know if there is a good answer. One saying, what would you say is the optimum number of automation emails for pre-reg campaign? And one saying, is there a recommended number of stories for a newsletter to maximize clicks?
There's never one answer.
No, I would say that's A/B testing and what works for your audience.
On the automation piece, this thing here, the number of automation emails for a pre-reg campaign, you've got to test that, but you've got to think, well, what is the point of each automation email that's going out? So if you're repeating the same thing 5 times, then that's not going to add any value. If each of those pre-reg automations is serving a purpose, one's a reminder. One might be something breaking news that you've not considered before. One might be you're creating a business case, right? This is the reason why I need to attend. So think about the purpose, the context of each of those emails, what role they're playing. The rest is testing. Number of stories. Yeah, you want too much scrolling because people get bored and But
conversely, if you've got 20 really good stories that people need to read and they're really relevant for them,
how about asking? I mean, how about asking your user, how many stories would you like? It's the same behavior as you would do with an app. On the BBC app, you can choose which categories you want to keep, and then if they want to change that, then absolutely. Get your user in control of the content they're receiving from you.
Yeah. And then another one, which I'm hoping you're able to answer quickly. I doubt you are. We had a question saying that we've used a couple of pay-as-you-go or subscription services like Campaign Monitor and Sendinblue, and in both cases have been surprised by the number of email addresses which are valid but get suppressed. How do we overcome this? I think they're talking there of like the sales app, info app, etc. I think the reason there is, and you're in a much better place, honestly. That's because everyone's sharing the same sender protocol and the same list, isn't that correct?
Well, everyone, I think with some large vendors that just are focused on sending, as much volume as possible, deliverability isn't really the priority for any particular one client.
Right.
So, those are global senders. You're pretty much on your own if you have a problem. That's one thing. I think when you work with vendors that deliverability they provide a service for, and that their focus is on you getting the most out of email marketing, then that might be a better ESP for you to work with. I think you've got to have a look at the makeup of your email addresses, and if you've got too much, a bigger proportion of sales app, if you've got role accounts, then that says something about the quality of your list. You want to try and avoid those because they are a red flag to inbox deliverability. So ISPs will measure the proportion of your list and how much are role accounts versus non-role accounts. And if you've got too many, then you won't get into the inbox anyway. So you've got to look at the quality of your data. We do a lot of work with our customers where we look at what's driving low deliverability. And so we do a lot of testing. We also allow our customers to work off their own IPs rather than shared pools. And there are different strategies for that. There are different pros and cons for that as well, depending on the circumstances. So, you've got to work with an ESP, I think, that wants to get to the bottom of your deliverability challenges, if that's the case, and solve them.
Okay, and I've got two more that we're going to sneak in past the deadline. One was, how can we promote digital to say it's as good as face-to-face, but not take away from the fact that we want them to attend face-to-face in the future?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, it's a mix, isn't it?
It's a mix. Like you say, you can have a great learning and educational panel and series via digital, but if suddenly my doorbell rings and I've got to go and answer it, I'm got to go and answer it. I'm going to miss bits. My doorbell's not going to ring while I'm on site at an event. And also at a face-to-face event, I can go and look at those guys on those booths and have those interactions that I can't have watching a presentation or an online event.
I think it's generally a mix of the both. I've had a mixed bag of digital online experiences. And sometimes those are things outside of our control, such as our broadband access and the quality of the video and so forth. I think death by PowerPoint has become a lot more prevalent in online events. I love this, Gareth, because this is what live is all about, is an actual fluid debate.
Yeah.
Really talking from the heart and not from a PowerPoint slide on ways in which we can support the industry, right?
We didn't need this to be an online debate. We could have had this over the phone and chatted about it.
Could have had this down the pub, really. That's what normally happens at the events. No, I like some of these hybrid.
That's what's missed in online is the pub afterwards. I've done more deals and had more interesting and actual breakthroughs in the pubs out around events. You'll meet someone at an event. Like, before I worked for MASH, I used to be a visitor at CONFEX. You'd meet people there, you'd get in a chat, you'd say, well, let's go and have a drink outside, and then you talk for hours.
Yeah. That's when you get a real creative buzz. And I think this is where it's not about returning everyone back to live events after the event. This isn't going to go away. I think it'll be a mix. And that's a really good thing for event organisers. It means you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, and that there are other side events that will support the main event. But I've seen some nice, the hybrid live events where you have presenters in a room, so you maintain that live edge experience, but people can join from offline as well. Why not? You know what I mean? You don't have to on the trains to come into Wells Court every 5 minutes. Fine. You'll get greater audience numbers, more leads for advertisers, and people will still benefit, So I think it's not about...
It's like auctions. You have people in the room, but there's people on the phone placing bids and interacting. And, what stops you having... as you say, a panel on the stage, having a conversation, people in the audience watching it, putting their hands up with questions, but then people firing in questions and watching it online.
I agree. Entirely agree.
And then the final one, which I don't know if we've skirted around, won't online fatigue play a huge factor soon, and we won't be keen to go back, and won't we just be keen to go back to live interactions at live events rather than, which makes online events second place? I think, like you said, I think there's a place for both. I don't think online events are going anywhere. I think they might go down a bit when live events are back, and I think we'll see live events shoot right up. But I think there's probably a place for both, and I think they both have their merits.
I entirely agree. There's limitations in both, and there are benefits to both. So the only way, I think, is to make sure you're adapted to any future events happening, is to make sure you have as best experience online as well as offline. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a choice between the two. That's the key, I think.
No, agree. Well, we've run on. Mark, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been insightful. I hope anyone else got benefit out of it. As I say, it was mainly just I was picking Mark's brain here for an hour. But if you've enjoyed this, make sure you join us next week for our CONFEX seminar. We have it Mastering a Hybrid Conference and Exhibition with panelists from Michael Whitaker, Susan Brogan, Caroline Morgan, Nathan Chu and Becky. So that is going to be a really good panel. I'm looking forward to that one. Mark, again, thank you for joining me, and thank you everyone for being involved and asking questions.